My name is Loretta Kane. I'm 57, live in Maine, have 2 sons, and a curly-haired golden retriever named Hazel who has lived with me for 16 years. I'd worked as a librarian for most of my life, and I considered myself, if not religious, at least kind. I loved nature. I believed in the soul, but not in hell. I believed in God, but not in the church. I buried birds in the garden, put marble stones on the graves, and whispered, "Rest in the grass." Everything changed in September. I had a heart attack. Not sudden, not loud. Just a slight pain in my chest, and it felt like someone had pulled the curtain. I don't remember ambulances, I don't remember hospitals. I just remember how quiet it was getting. How the sounds of life became distant echoes, and the body just an extra suit. And then it started. I was standing, no, I was in a place that neither the word paradise nor the word dream can describe. It was a silence made of light. And there, in that transparent eternity, one who breathed the truth came to me. I knew it was Jesus. Not because it was like on icons, it wasn't. His face was too vivid to be permanent. It changed, flowed like a fire in a fireplace, now a young man, then an old man, then someone I loved but had long forgotten. He said, "You're not dead. But you've come to ask a question that you've been hiding in your heart since you were a child." I didn't say a word. But he did. "Hazel?" I whispered. He nodded. And in that instant, the ground I was standing on disappeared. There was only the light and the field. Huge, green, just like when I was a kid. And on it, packs. Millions of animals. Flying, running, floating. Dogs with eyes of devotion. Cats full of independent light. Slow whales singing in the air. And most of all horses. Their souls were like ribs of light. "They're waiting," Jesus said. "What?" "Their own. Their call. They don't forget." I cried, but there, in that place, the tears did not fall. They became flowers. But, I tried to find the words. Why don't they tell us that? Why is the church silent? He looked at me. And for the first time, sad. Because man has made himself a crown, forgetting that I am the root. In that moment, I saw a different side. Woven out of gray. There were places where the souls of animals those killed for sport, for profit, for habit, couldn't leave. They were waiting for forgiveness. They were waiting for someone to mention them. Small birds, caged tigers, cows with baby eyes. "It's a memory," he said. "And you're one of the ones carrying it. But what can I do? Tell me. Tell them that I am not only the God of men. I am the breath of every creature. Those who love the beast are already close to my kingdom." And in the next second, everything was gone. I woke up in intensive care. A nurse was standing over me in a white lab coat, smiling. "Welcome back, ma'am." But I didn't come back. Not quite. I stayed there. Partly. Since then, I've been talking to dogs as equals. I leave milk on the porch for the departed cats. And, most importantly, I tell you. Even if they laugh at me. Even if my sons think I've become eccentric. Because now I know. And when I go back to sleep, for real I'll hear footsteps. And barking. And the sound of hooves. And I'll meet you halfway. Where the animals sleep. And where the one who calls their name is waiting. The first morning back was like a hangover from a God's dream. I was in a hospital room, and everything didn't seem right. The walls were too straight. The light is too dead. People are like cardboard figures. They talked, joked, stroked my hand, but I felt that their souls were far away, busy with loans, lunches, news, but not with themselves. There was silence inside me, but not the same as before the experience. This one was tight. By cargo. It was as if something was waiting for me to move, to speak, to act. It was as if the silence itself was watching. "You're very lucky," the doctor said with a smile. "The heart stood for 3 minutes, but you are our champion. You can write a book." I smiled. Only he didn't know I'd already started it, inside. Without a pen. Without paper. In words of light. On the 3rd day, I was discharged. I went back to my house, old, wooden, with the smell of time. Hazel's blanket lay in the chair by the window. He still smelled of her, grass, wool, sun. I held it to my face, and burst into tears. But these were different tears. Not just melancholy. It was recognition. As if you suddenly realize that your dog is not just a dog, but a wanderer who went with you all the earth's journey in silence, faithfully, without a single reproach. And now that you've peeked through the curtain, you know she's waiting. She remembers. And she forgave you before you were even born. I didn't sleep that night. My whole body felt like it was itching, not from illness, but from an unspeakable need. I needed to do something. To say. To share. I pulled out an old box of photos. There was Hazel and me on the lake shore. Me and Hazel on the first day. Me and Hazel in the background of Christmas. And the more I looked, the more clearly I heard a voice inside, not the voice of Jesus, no, but an echo. The echo of his words. You keep them in your memory for a reason. You are the vessel, and they are the water. I went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. At 3:17 a.m., I heard a sound. No, not outside. Inside. It was like a soft scratching on glass. The image appeared instantly, a paw. The paw of a dog, its features indistinct, but in the ashes. She was standing on the edge of something, and calling out to me. And then I understood, I need to find out where they go when they leave. And most importantly, who meets them there. In the morning, I opened my Bible. For the first time in decades. The page opened by itself. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 19. Humans share the same fate as animals. Both are dying. Everything came from dust and everything is coming back to dust. I stared at those words, and something inside me screamed, no. It's not true. This is before the cross. Before the light. This is just the beginning. My finger slid down the page, and caught another. Isaiah 11 verse 6. And it shall come to pass, that the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid. And there, in that phrase, I heard the truth. Not a theological one. Not a church one. A live one. They will live. I closed the Bible. I looked out the window. And she swore. I'll find my way back. Not for my own sake. For their sake. For the sake of those who can't talk about the pain. But who is still waiting to be called by name. I don't remember falling asleep. Only that I didn't wake up in bed, but in some other space. Not a dream, but not a reality. It was like a park, but it was all wrong. The trees were arched, the grass glowed with a faint, blue light, and the air was thick as if it were underwater. I stood barefoot in my white nightgown and felt that this was not a figment of my imagination. This is the threshold again. Where is the thin line between soul and truth? There were no people there. Only creatures. Animals. Hundreds, thousands. Some of them I recognized: dogs, horses, birds. But there were also those that do not exist in nature. Or it didn't exist for a long time. Paws with feathers. Eyes like people's. The movements are almost reasonable. But most importantly, they were all nameless. I felt it not in my mind, but in my heart. They looked at me, not with hostility, but with an expectation. As if something was going to happen. As if I should have named them. Where is it? I whispered. My voice echoed, not in my ears, but in my chest. And then he appeared. Not Jesus, but a messenger. A creature, tall, glowing from within. Not an angel like in the pictures. His face had no features, but I could feel his eyes on me. He didn't speak with his mouth. But he said, "It's a garden, Loretta. But not Eden. This is where they wait. This is the middle of nowhere. Waiting for what? The ones who called them. Who remembered. Who bore the pain without turning away." I walked slowly past the animals. One of them, an old, gray-haired dog, got up and came over to me. His eyes were wet. He looked at me in a way that no one else had since Hazel died. And I knew it was him. But not him. He's a pain in the ass. To the point of fear. Before being put to sleep. It was intact. I dropped to my knees and snuggled up to him. "I was so afraid you weren't here," I whispered. "He never disappeared," the messenger said again. "They don't die, Loretta. They are left out." I didn't understand. By whom? Those who refused to see the soul without the word. Who considered them something lower. But this is a lie. And now you know. He pointed to the horizon. Far away, something blackened like a storm. Or a funnel. There was a howl coming from it. Not bestial. Human. And I heard a call. Not weak, but desperate. They can't go there. Until you name them. I don't understand. What does name mean? To name is to recognize. What they were. That they suffered. That they didn't live for nothing. And then I saw it. A word appeared before each creature, a name, an image, an emotion. Not fuzzy, not ball, but something deeper. It's like every soul is a chord, and it's the first time I've heard it clearly. Are they saved? The ones they remember. Who was loved? Because love is the door, even for those who didn't speak your language. I sniffled. I felt like my chest was going to burst with a feeling I couldn't name. The light began to dim. Everything was disappearing. And just before I woke up, I heard the last thing. Don't be silent. Others don't remember. But they're waiting. Animals don't have words. But you do. I woke up crying. The room was dark, except for the streetlight outside, which cast a ragged shadow on the wall. I was lying in the same bed, with the same blanket, but something inside me didn't come back. I felt like I was on fire inside. It didn't burn, but it required movement. Talk. Remember. Open the door. I went to the kitchen. Quiet, barefoot. I opened an old box of photos, and there they were. Hazel. Martin. Phoebe. Every muzzle, every tail. They are no longer there. But now I knew that wasn't the case. They waited, and maybe even watched. Not from the sky, as we are taught, but from somewhere, from a garden without time. I started writing. Don't pray, write. Letters. To each of them. I called them by name, remembered their fears, their smells, the way Phoebe shivered in the storm, the way Hazel fell asleep snuggled up to me. I wrote until dawn. Then I decided to tell the church about it. I haven't been there in a long time. But now it seemed I had no right to remain silent. There, in the middle of nowhere, I was given a task. And I had to do it. On Sunday, I entered the building as if it were a strange house. The room was the same, and most of the faces were the same. But I saw it differently now. I could feel what was hidden under the smiles. Fatigue. Disbelief. Indifference worn down by prayers. When the pastor came up to me after the service, I told him. Without preface. Without a request to listen. I was there, I said. Jesus showed me that animals don't disappear. They're waiting. He said that love is the door. Even if we don't understand them, they still feel them, remember them, and wait for us to name them. He looked at me like I was sick. Loretta, it's touching. But animals don't have souls, you know. So it is written. They don't have the spirit that we do. You weren't there, I said. Jesus said to me, they don't die. They leave them. The hall became quiet. Someone turned around. Someone chuckled. The pastor put his hand on my shoulder, but his fingers were cold as stone. We pray for you, sister. Sometimes after surgery there may be experiences. God will heal you. I left. Not evil. Not humiliated. Lonely. But that night I heard them again. Whisper. Whining. Not a complaint, but a hope. I knew it wasn't crazy. It's a call. Jesus didn't tell me to convince everyone. He said, speak up. So I started writing. Letters to newspapers. Posts on the internet. Articles. But not like a madwoman. I spoke about my experience as a witness, not a prophet. Sometimes they wrote to me and thanked me. Sometimes they spat. One man sent me a picture of his old dog and just one word. He was waiting. I burst into tears. I wrote back, yes. And you'll hear it if you don't turn away. It was just beginning. The letter arrived on the third day. Not by mail, not electronically. Someone put it in my mailbox. An old envelope, thin paper, neat handwriting. No sender's name. Only, for Loretta, who saw it. I opened it while standing at the sink, my fingers trembling like the day I first heard whispers when I got back. There were only a few paragraphs inside, written in ink that was already a little blurry from moisture or tears. I was there too. I know this garden. I remember the smell of it. But I didn't see Jesus. I heard someone calling my name, but not in a human voice. It was my cat that died 15 years ago. She was waiting for me by the river, in the shade of a tree that cast no shadow. They're not just alive. They don't forget. Every sorry he doesn't say is pulsing like a hum. They don't judge. But they remember. I thought I was alone. I was excommunicated while I was telling the story. My husband left. I was in psychiatry. But that place is more real than anything I can see now. If you were really there, you know. You don't have to keep quiet. Because every year the garden pales. We forget, and it disappears. They depend on our memory. If you want to know more, meet me. I will go where there is water and stone. There was only a sign at the bottom, not a signature, not a name, but a simple drawing of an eye with a drop in the pupil. A symbol that I didn't immediately understand, but that has haunted my dreams and reflections ever since. I put the letter on the table and sat down. My heart was thudding as if it were underwater. Who is she? How does he know? Why is he writing to me? But most of all, why did her every sentence echo my dream? Where is the water and the stone? I knew where to go. An old park out of town that I visited with Martin, my retriever. There was a fountain that had collapsed decades ago, leaving only a bowl drenched in rain and a single boulder covered in moss. I used to call it the memory pool. I went there that night. Without a flashlight. without hope. Just to check. And in the fog, I saw a woman. A lone figure in a long gray coat, standing near a rock. Her face was hidden, but I knew it was her. The one who also remembers. She didn't say anything. She just held up her hand and there was the locket in it. I stepped closer. It was engraved with, "Only what is loved does not die." And then she said something I'll never forget. We carry their voices inside us. While we're talking, they're still alive. But if we stop talking, they will disappear forever. Not because they are mortal, but because we are forgetful. And I realized that my return was not a blessing. This is a warning. I didn't sleep the next night. I didn't even try. My body was in the chair, and my mind was somewhere between. In the same garden that the woman and I were talking about by the stone. But he was different now. The grass didn't glow as much as it used to. It looked faded and cracked. Trees, with drooping crowns. The sky was dim, as if through frosted glass. Only one color remained unchanged, the eyes of animals. Hundreds of eyes. Thousands. They were looking at me. They found out. And, worst of all, they waited. I couldn't move. I felt that in this place everything depends on the movement of the soul, not the legs. But my soul froze. She was afraid of what she would hear if she took a step. And then I saw them. Not people. Shadows. High, almost transparent, like smoke. But each one carried images inside, the face of a dead dog, a flash of memory, a scream drowned out by time. They were memory carriers. Not dead, not angels, not demons. They were vessels. One of them came closer. Through his chest, I saw a picture of a girl petting a rabbit in the backyard. He put his arm around me, but without touching me. It was like a stream going straight to the core. "Can you feel it?" "No," he said. "It's the pain of forgetting. We don't suffer from death. We suffer from being forgotten, and the garden dies." I tried to speak, but my voice wouldn't come out. Only words formed in my head. "Why me? Why are you showing me this?" "Because you're still carrying the trail. The place mark. The light that the one who saved you saw. You are one of those who can remember not with your mind, but with your spirit." I fell to my knees. The ground was soft, but not muddy, it felt alive. And I could see the threads running out of it, glowing tendons connecting me to the shadows. With memories. "Where are the others?" I whispered. The shadow pointed to the sky. And then I saw the gaps. Black cracks in space through which images disappeared. Entire sections of the garden crumbled in an instant, as if they had collapsed. Where memories disappeared, reality itself died. It's all going away. When the world stops remembering the invisible, it becomes impossible. He passed his hand through the air, and a symbol appeared on it, the eye with the drop. "You must find others. People with the same sign. You are not many, but you are the binders. You keep a garden. Got it?" "I don't understand." "As long as one of you remembers, they exist. But there are fewer of you. Because fear erases even the truth." I woke up screaming. The morning was bright, but it didn't bring any answers. It just reminded me that I wasn't alone anymore. And I must find others before the garden disappears forever. A week has passed. Maybe 2. I can't tell the days apart anymore. Morning was just the border between dreams. In this new state of life, I began to notice them. Not shadows. People. I didn't look for them specifically. They appeared by themselves randomly, as if they were being drawn into my orbit. The first was the man on the bus, an elderly man with wrinkles like cracks in a dried-up river. He was holding on his lap the box in which the kitten was sleeping, blind, with white fur and a ragged ear. Our eyes met, and I saw it. Sign. Not on the skin. Not literally. I recognized it as one recognizes the smell of childhood or the melody of a dream. At the level of pre-consciousness. Between cells, between tears. It had a garden. And pain. And guilt. Did you find him? I blurted out before I could process the question. He looked at me in surprise, then understanding. Very quietly, so that the others couldn't hear, he said. He came to me at night. He showed me the tree where my Benji sleeps. I woke up, and this kitten was on the doorstep. I knew it wasn't just an animal. It's a memory. I wanted to say more, but the bus stopped. He left without looking back. But I knew he was one of us. The other one I met at the funeral. A friend's daughter died of an overdose. Everything was steeped in grief, but in my mother herself, a woman in a lilac headscarf, I felt a strange calm. Not apathy. Not pretense. Something else. After the ceremony, she came up to me. I didn't ask for a name. She didn't introduce herself. I saw the garden, too, she whispered. When? After the first miscarriage. There was a deer. He looked at me with the eyes of a child. He said that pain is not a curse, but a door. That some entities choose suffering to become a bridge. Her lips were trembling. But not out of fear. From something ancient, forgotten. I started making a list. Write them down marked ones. A boy drawing the same tree with 6 branches, even though no one taught him. A woman with a fox tattoo who claims that her pet came to her in a dream and told her how he died. A homeless man who says that dogs lead him to places where you can't see the sky. And that there, in the tunnel, he saw people from the light. They didn't know each other. But they were connected. An invisible but unbreakable thread. Each carried a garden. Or a fragment of it. And with each new one marked, I felt it, the garden come alive inside me. But with this revival came darkness. Because we're not the only ones who can remember. That night I dreamed of a lion. He was walking through the garden, but there was no light in his eyes, it was ash. He stopped in front of me and said, "You're collecting carriers. But you forget, even among them there may be forgotten ones." "Who are they?" I asked. "Those who once saw the garden, but turned away." I woke up in a cold sweat. Because I knew it was a warning. I will meet such a person soon. And then everything will change. He was ordinary. Even too much. Short graying haircut, neat clothes, warm voice. His name was Mr. Grant, and he was a volunteer at the shelter where I decided to spend the morning. I just wanted to help with the animals. I didn't expect to find it. He stroked the dog with its paralyzed hind legs affectionately, whispering something that sounded like a prayer but wasn't one. There was no pity in his gestures. Only calculation. We started talking. He said he used to be a veterinarian. In a calm voice, he talked about death, about the procedures of euthanasia. His words were too light, as if it wasn't about living, but about fixing furniture. But then he said something strange. "You know, people think animals go to heaven. But I was there. That's not so. It's empty. Just us." The words passed through me like a draft. I froze. He was there. I felt it right away. His aura wasn't like the others. Not light. And not dark. Extinct. "You were dying?" I asked quietly. He smiled. Too wide. A few minutes. My heart stopped in the operating room. It was chilly. Calmly. I was led by a dog that I put to sleep myself. He showed me. He paused, his eyes glazed over, that I was right. Right about what? He turned to me. His eyes were glassy, almost inky. That suffering is unnecessary. Not useful. System error. If everyone accepted pain as garbage, we would have long lived without it. A garden? This is a hallucination for the sentimental. I saw the truth. And she, empty. I felt something tighten inside me. He was lying. Not just in words, but in their very essence. But, worst of all, he believed his lies. I didn't sleep that night. All the air in the house was heavy. The cat was hiding under the bed, shivering. All the lights began to blink, and somewhere outside the window, in the darkness, something was breathing. I stood up. She lit a candle. She began to pray. But the prayers were muffled, as if they had been said underwater. And then I saw him again. Jesus was standing at the foot of the stairs, and his face was full of sorrow. "You've met the forgetful," he said. He didn't just forget. He recanted. Yes. But not immediately. He had once heard the garden singing, too. And once he said, "No. It hurts. I don't want to remember." He turned away from pain, and from love. Is he dangerous? It's empty. And the void is always hungry. Seek his footprints among those who want peace without pain at the cost of truth. It is they who call a lie in my name. I realized that Mr. Grant's story was no exception. He's a harbinger. Warning. A slit in the fabric of reality, from which oozes a different faith, a belief in sterility, in cleansing from compassion, in false deliverance. And I knew I wasn't going to meet just one. And a whole system of such people. The garden whispered to me that the gate would open soon. And not everyone who passes through them will return the same. Dreams were no longer dreams. I didn't know where the morning started anymore. I just woke up inside something. Once it was a field with white dogs that barked without a sound. In the other, a room where all the walls were made of mirrors, but my reflection was absent. But that night, I was in a place that was real. Palpably real. I was walking down a stone corridor. The walls were lined with metal slabs. It smelled of iron, wet stone, and something old. I could hear a hum, like a giant heart beating under my feet, dull and steady. There was a hall ahead. It was round, and in the center was a structure, not a cross, not an altar, but a sort of huge mechanical organ. Black liquid pulsed in its tubes. All around, people in white clothes. They stood in absolute silence. Their faces were expressionless. But in the eyes, I saw what I saw in Mr. Grant's eyes. The void. They didn't pray. They didn't sing. They didn't prostrate themselves. They just waited. And then I knew it wasn't a dream. This is a reflection. Leak into reality. A gap between worlds. I didn't feel like I was sleeping. I could smell leather. I could hear my breath pounding in my skull. It was a body, not a spirit. "You're here," a voice said from behind. I turned around. There he stood. Yeshua. But not the same as before. His face was obscured by a shadow. As if I couldn't see his face in this place. Where am I? This is a temple not built by me. They created it out of fear and called it faith. Out of hunger, and they called it the truth. I pointed at the people. Who are they? X's. Those who refused. It was revealed to everyone, but everyone turned away. Not everyone goes into the dark. Some stay here. Between. Why am I seeing this? He didn't answer right away. Because you're still alive. Which means you're connected to both worlds. And they know it. They're already reaching out to you. One of the whites turned. His face began to change. The skin was dripping like wax, revealing, not bones, but a smooth surface like a mannequin's. The eyes were gone. A whisper came out of his mouth. Leave them alone. No pets are needed. Love is chemistry. The garden is a myth. These are all the dregs of evolution. I staggered back, but my legs wouldn't move. Then Yeshua touched my hand. And the shadow of his face disappeared. I saw sadness. Endless, deep, and heartbreaking. This temple will not be destroyed by the sword. Just the word. You have to talk. Witness. Because soon there will be someone who will say, I came from him. But he will be one of them. I woke up screaming. My face was wet, as if I'd been crying. The cat lay on top of me, shivering. From that day on, I started writing. Everything I saw. Everything I've heard. Not for the sake of faith, but for the sake of warning. Because now I knew, those who have turned their backs on love also have a religion. She has no mercy. Just iron, hunger, and a dead heart. And this temple is growing. He's already here. I went to Louisiana because the email that came to my email account didn't leave me any peace. They're coming back. But it's not them. My dog, it died, I held it dead in my arms. 3 days later, she was standing on the doorstep. The body is the same. The eyes don't. You are welcome. I was told that you were there. I know it sounds crazy. But you will understand. My name is Dolly. I didn't know how she got my address. I didn't publish my notes anywhere. Only in one chat, under a pseudonym. But her message didn't sound fake. There was a horror in him that you couldn't pretend. Dolly's house stood on the edge of town, on a remote land. Low oaks, a suspension bridge, an old veranda with a chair swinging on chains. The door opened before I could knock. The woman looked to be in her 70s, but there was a steel in her eyes that I knew, the steel of someone who had experienced something. He's in the yard, she said before I could say hello. Who? Him. Baxter. My dog. I went out into the backyard and saw the dog. A large, ash-gray retriever. Calm. He sat there as if waiting for a command. But when he turned to me, I felt, not saw, that it wasn't a dog. It contained a dog. But something else was looking through her eyes. I took a step back. He doesn't bark. He doesn't eat. Just sitting there. And looks. Dolly was standing next to him. I buried him by an old oak tree. And on the third day, he came back. No dirt. No smell. Like new. I slowly moved closer. Baxter didn't move. I sat down next to him. There was silence. And then he blinked. Gradually. Humanly. Who are you? I whispered. A voice, not from his mouth, but from inside me, said. You're one of the marked ones. We didn't come for the flesh. And for memory. Because the soul of the beast is a pure vessel. And you are overwhelmed. We've come to take what you've lost. I recoiled. My heart began to pound. Dolly looked at me as if I were a lifesaver. Is that true? Is that what he's saying? I'm not crazy. I didn't know what to say. I just remembered Yeshua's words. They will bring back what you loved. But without love. When we went back inside, the dog stayed outside. He was still sitting up. But when I looked out the window, he was looking right at me, even though he wasn't moving. like he was waiting for my answer. I left before dawn. Behind them was the house. On the veranda, a woman who was praying. And next to her was the one she called Baxter. But it wasn't Baxter. When I got home, I felt that something had changed in me. Not just because I've seen things that most people can't see, but because I now understood that the world is much deeper and more terrible than every prayer, every word in my life. A few weeks passed. At night, I heard whispers, the voices of animals I knew and those I didn't. Voices filled with longing and fear, but also hope. The hope of liberation. On one of those nights, I called John, a former priest I'd met on the road in a small village on the outskirts of town. He lost his speech after his near-death experience, but he was holding tons of drawings in his hands. They are all the same image. Face. The face from the iron temple that I saw in my vision. John was silent, but his eyes spoke louder than his words. He showed me the final touches of his drawing, and I saw a warning in them. A warning that the real battle isn't taking place on earth, but in the shadows between worlds. Yeshua was telling me the truth. We should not blindly follow those who hold power. After all, sometimes those who seem to be light are really just a reflection of the darkness itself. My faith has changed. It became sharper, cleaner. I realized that faith is not just words and rituals. It is a choice to go into the dark without fear of seeing the truth. I'm a witness. And I will tell this story in spite of my fear and doubts. Because silence is letting the darkness win. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm ready to be the light, even if it means going against everything I've known. And this is the real freedom.